Well, for more on President Trump's trade policy and what it's informed by, I'm joined by Simon Lester, a trade policy analyst at the Cato Institute. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
So, Simon, as we know, the goals and the catchphrases of the Trump administration in terms of their economic policy have been America first and make America great again. Given what we've seen so far by President Trump, how do his positions either hurt or further that goal?
Well, in my opinion, free trade and free markets are better for the economy, and his actions so far have been going in the opposite direction. You could argue that there is some strategic value in lowering foreign trade barriers. The question there is just what's the best way to do it. And what he's done is been very aggressive and be very unilateral. The U.S. is going to bully everyone into doing what we want. Arguably, a better approach would be to work together with allies. So if the problem is China's trade practices, the better approach would be work together with other allies who feel the same way to together put pressure on China through the multilateral trading system.
And we're seeing Donald Trump really view these trade relationships through the lens of trade deficits. And that's also led to increased tensions between major trade partners. And then, of course, this tit for tat we've seen with tariffs with China. How do you think Trump has misjudged the situation, if that's your take?
I think he's misjudged it. It's hard to get into his head and figure out exactly why he sees trade deficits the way he does. When you ask just about any economist, they will tell you that the bilateral trade deficit trade balance between two countries doesn't tell you much. A bilateral trade deficit could be a sign that your economy is very strong and you're buying a lot of products, and not the sign of weakness. And so you can't just look at the number, see a negative, and declare that somebody's doing something wrong. But nevertheless, he has said this, and some of his top advisors have said this, and they don't seem to be convinced otherwise. So that's the basis of their actions, and nobody's been able to talk them out of it.
And we've certainly seen Trump change his mind in terms of his rhetoric on China. It's hard to really get some consistency. One second it's very critical of the trade policies, another second congratulating them for the progress that they've made. Do you view this then as more economically or politically motivated when we see him? It seems like he's more throwing meat to his base.
There are some people who would say that President Trump is playing 4D chess. He's got a sophisticated strategy here that we all can't follow. I don't know exactly what's going on in his mind. It often seems, though, that his remarks are just more off the cuff. It's something that it was in his mind at a particular moment, and he said it. And it may not be consistent with what he said before, and we just don't know if it's a master strategy or just his feelings at that moment, which change depending on what happened in relation to the person he's talking about the previous day.
So for foreign trade partners who are trying to understand, when he does come up with these comments or these tweets, is it more considered an economic strategy in terms of a negotiation, or should people really be taking this as economic policy signals?
At this point, having seen it for over a year and then also during the campaign, if I were a trading partner in the United States, I would not take it that seriously. I would wait to see if my discussions with U.S. trade negotiators change to reflect the comments. If not, you might dismiss them and say, okay, that's just that was his strategy that day, or that was his feelings that day, and it's not a sign of a new strategy. I think we've seen enough remarks that didn't get carried forward that we should be cautious about thinking, oh, there's a major change in policy coming because of the latest tweet.
Now, let's also look at his policies that we know there's been a lot of focus on manufacturing, bringing back manufacturing and those sorts of jobs. But do the policies that worked when the U.S. was a manufacturing powerhouse still work now that you have this very interconnected global economy? And does he risk perhaps setting the U.S. back?
There are some people, I think, who look back on this glory era of the 1950s and 60s where the U.S. was a manufacturing powerhouse. But what they need to keep in mind is at that time, Japan and Europe were recovering from the war, and manufacturing was pretty inefficient. We needed a lot of people to do it. Today, the United States does manufacture still a lot of goods, but we need far fewer people. We automate a lot of these factories. So I don't think that it's possible to bring back that past era where manufacturing plays such a significant role in the economy. It's just that that's not how the manufacturing sector works today.
Now, President Trump has been in power now for more than a year. He's managed to pass tax reform. Now, there are still issues like immigration and, of course, his huge infrastructure plan that still need to be addressed. You have these trade tensions, and all in a year where we have midterm elections coming at the end of the year. Just how important is this year for Trump in terms of getting his economic vision together?
Well, this is his last chance to do something, before the elections, as you said. So he does have a tax reform package that he can point to last year, but he and his fellow Republicans might want to have something more. So it would be an achievement, an accomplishment, if he could point to a new NAFTA. Look, I promised you a new NAFTA, and I got you one. Or it would be an achievement if there was some sort of negotiated deal between the U.S. and China, where China actually conceded on some issues and protected intellectual property better, things like that. So I think it's important to him. I think it's important to the Republicans in general, and I'm sure they're working towards it. Whether they have the right strategy and whether it's achievable, we don't know yet. It's politics is complicated.
Indeed. Thank you so much. Simon Lester there from the Cato Institute.